am just keeping my eye out for Body Image with Brie. Brianna Campos is going to join us tonight for our Instagram Live. And of course, I'm like old, so I'm like trying to watch as people are joining to keep my eye out for Brie. There she is. Yay. Let me see. All right. Sending the invite. It should be coming. Oh, it says it's connecting. This is yay!
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, this is so exciting.
I know. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I was like waiting for my phone to do something like unsavory, which is what it did all Monday night. Like I kept, I'd like tap on it, it wouldn't work. Questions would pop up. The next thing I know, people are on my dog bed. It was great.
Sometimes like I call it like going in jail, like streaks start coming across my face and I'm like, I don't know what's happening, or I'll get a call in the middle of a live. So we just roll with it.
Yeah, it's all good. And
it's all good.
So I figure, if your cat shows up, that's great. I'm sure my dog will. So
perfect. It'll be a whole family affair.
I was just starting to bringing out my daughter's listening to Trolls now, the music from Trolls downstairs, which is like a really good soundtrack. So
yeah,
damn it out. God, it's great. Awesome. So welcome. I'm really excited about this, and
me too.
I'm sure people will hop on and off as we kind of move forward. It's been great. I've gotten a lot of feedback from folks saying thanks so much for saving these, because they come back and they watch them later.
Oh, wonderful.
And
awesome.
Yeah, so I do a screen record later so we can share that. It'll be fun.
Perfect. That'll be great.
Yeah, so I'm just going to do a little introduction and then ask you a bunch of questions. It'll be fun.
Sounds great.
So everybody, this is Brianna Campos, a licensed, did I say your last name correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Yay! She is a licensed mental health counselor in the state of New Jersey, a body image and eating disorder recovery coach. And her goal is to help change the conversation from diets and rules to acceptance and freedom, which I love. Mm-hmm. She has a podcast that explores the ins and outs of body image, self-esteem, diet culture, and self-love. She also has a fantastic Instagram account. She's at Body Image with Brie. So if you are not following her, get on and follow her, because you are missing out if you're not following her.
Thank you.
Make sure that you get on and follow her as soon as we're done, if you're not already.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. I appreciate that.
Well, you are a beautiful person, so
thank you.
It's great. I'm so excited that you're here tonight. Can you tell us a little bit about just maybe a little bit of your story, or how did you get started doing what you're doing?
Yeah,
great work.
Absolutely. So, so my background obviously is in counseling, and so a little bit before that, I clearly live life in a larger body, and I've always struggled with body image issues. But in the trajectory of my life, body image was always correlated with how are you going to change your body. So you're uncomfortable in your body, let's change it. And then my body image would only change when my body got smaller, and then it would go back, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would be uncomfortable again. And so I had this, ping pong relationship with my body. And then I started going to graduate school to become a counselor, because I knew I wanted to do counseling, had no idea with what. And I always say that I found eating disorders an accident, because despite living in a larger body, I don't identify with having had an eating disorder. Definitely identify with severe disordered eating. And now I probably would say even maybe body dysmorphia. And so I found eating disorders an accident because I needed an internship. And I remember I would be running these groups on body image, and the girls in my group would be like, listen, you need to give us something tangible to walk away. Give us something that we can walk out of here today and feel a little bit better about our bodies. And I go to the books on body image, and I'm like, this sucks. I don't even like this. This wouldn't work for me. So it caused me to do two things. It caused me to do my own research on how to help people with body image, but it also forced me to turn inward. And how do I work on my own body image? And even though I was sitting across from, because I worked at a center that only worked with women, and as I was sitting across from women and girls, telling them that they could love themselves despite how their body looked, the cognitive dissonance in my own life didn't translate, as it still felt like this thing that I needed to achieve of okay, as soon as I get the ideal body size, I'm going to feel comfortable in my skin. And through many years of therapy, getting my master's in mental health counseling, being in the field, and then for me, the last piece, hearing about health at every size and intuitive eating, I say it was like a light bulb switch, because I had already done so much work that when I finally realized, wait a second, like I don't need my body doesn't mean anything like in this world to, and if it does to someone, it says more about them than it does to me, but that I have the right to unbiased medical care, to love and respect and belonging and inclusion. And that is at my smallest and at my largest. And I just posted something recently today that hit me so hard. I see some friends of mine joining and I'm like, hi. It was like, if you're waiting for the confidence to come or the acceptance to come from other people, what you really need is the acceptance of yourself. And once I was able to say, you know what, I love my body, I love myself, and even if my body changes or even if it doesn't, that I am still worthy and I belong in all of these things, that's what took that's what made the transition for me.
God, that is so beautiful.
Thank you.
And I think about like, oh gosh, it's almost hard to like not have cognitive dissonance, and to some degree, because like we are so bombarded with messages like all day long. And I'm sure they have not gotten worse, but maybe it's because like we're all home right now that we are exposed to, I mean, just take like the fitness industry alone. I feel like it's like every third thing that you scroll through is like, it's like change your body by, or like come out of the quarantine with like a better body.
Right.
Like,
right. It is diet culture just seeping its way into a quarantine, which it baffles me, because I'm like, if the biggest thing that you're worried about of coming out of this quarantine is that you're going to gain weight, you have it pretty good, since we're quarantined, because people are at risk of dying. So, and it's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow.
Yes.
Because it's so uncomfortable for people to gain weight.
Yeah, there's it's, for some reason it reminds me, I think I said this the other day. We had Therese Razor from Healing Crayons was on.
Yes.
She said something about like, your bodies are supposed to change throughout the lifespan anyway. Like we don't stay our birth weight throughout. Mm-hmm. And I love that, right? Like, right. Why are we all expected to be like 8-pound babies? Like whether we're like 12 or 30 or 40 or whatever, or right. 50. And why do we have 50-year-olds that are striving to look like their 15-year-old or 17-year-old selves?
Absolutely.
It's like this complete messed up messaging that we have. And we've been so like focused on this external appearance. Like we forget, I think it's Anna Sweeney, the dietitian.
Yeah.
Anna.
Love it.
Right, like I love her. She calls them earth suits, right? Like you are more than your earth suit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even taking that like a step further is it's not so much of like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the podcast Dietitians Unplugged.
Oh, I haven't heard it.
With Erin Flores and I forgot who else.
I love Erin.
Oh, amazing. And they had this one guest on the podcast who talked about the similarity between diet culture and like cult, right? And cults, and how we are just indoctrinated to believe, like if you are not pursuing weight loss, people look at you like, what? Like you love your body? That doesn't make sense, because we are just indoctrinated into this belief that we are supposed to be smaller and hate our bodies. And I always tell my clients, like, somebody profits off that. Nobody profits off of you being exactly who you are. Your body changes, and then everything you need is inside of you.
That's true. It's true. Nobody makes any money on that at all.
Right. And so when you come out of this cult, you're like, whoa, it's in everything. It just, it seeps its way into all these areas of our life, that when you start coming out of diet culture, you start realizing, wow, I can't believe I used to think that way. It's
so true. So when people now, like when you have clients, right, and they're telling you things like, I'm like at home, I'm bombarded with social media messages around fitness culture and diet culture, or specifically fitness culture. Let's just do that one first. And I'm feeling really guilty because I can't move my body the way that I used to. And I'm worried because, I don't know, maybe my meal plan was made for a slightly active me. and they're freaking out. Like, what advice are you kind of giving them?
Yeah, yeah. So again, a lot of what I talk about on my page, which I feel like, especially in eating disorder recovery, we don't make enough space for the area of body grief. We don't make space for people to be uncomfortable with their body changing, right? We always go to the positives and the, well, you know, at least you have a body and you should be grateful for what your body can do, as opposed to, I'm going to sit with you in this discomfort right now. And if, even if I can't understand what you're going through, that sucks. That sucks. So the first thing I tell people is I say, I'm going to sit in this grief bench with you, right? And I'm just going to let it be uncomfortable. And even if you look at what we're going through right now as a nation, we do not do well with sitting in discomfort. We like to change the
Yep.
conversation, which is why I think a lot of times when we talk about body image, it's like, well, what can we do to change it? And so the first piece is really just making grief, room for grief. And the second piece is reality testing, right? So going back to that example of, you know, a baby at, you know, I look at what my niece and nephew do, and they're, you know, 3 and 5. And I'm like, I don't think I would be able to do that now anyway, but I don't judge myself, right? Like they're doing cartwheels and running. And we have this presumption of we're supposed to be able to do this and continue to do this, and we make judgments right away, like, oh, it's got to be because of my weight, or it's got to be because I've gained weight, rather than realize maybe it's because I'm older that I'm not able to do these things, or maybe because
Yeah.
I've lost flexibility, or maybe because now I sit all day, my joints are a little bit different, that there's other reasons why. And then again, going back to, so I'll give you an example. One of the things I had to grieve was that it's not easy for me to put on shoes and tie my shoes the regular way. And I've had many clients say, you know, I just want to be able to tie my shoes without feeling like I'm out of breath. And I said, okay, but if we don't get there, can we just grieve that? Can we just grieve the discomfort of that loss? Because I think what's worse is not the loss of the activity, it's the shame that we have
Yes.
not being able to do that activity.
That's actually so beautiful, because that,
Thank you.
honestly, I feel like everything you just said, nobody talks about.
Agreed.
Like, nobody talks about it.
Right.
Like, I think about all the other messages out there, which is like, love your body,
Right.
accept your body, look at all the wonderful things your body does. Meanwhile, you know, the person who is really struggling with that dissonance of like not loving their body is like, what the freak are you talking about? Like, I hate this thing that I'm stuck in.
Right. And then you shame yourself for not loving your body. Like I saw a post the other day that was like a person took a picture of their stretch marks, and it was like a love letter to their stretch marks. And I try to be so genuine on my page. If you are not a stretch mark worshiping person, that's okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be like this is so different from diet culture that says, you know, health or fitness has one look. Body love and body acceptance can have many different looks. And so maybe the trajectory for you is never going to be that you worship your stretch marks, or you're never going to be the person that wants to come on camera and jiggle your body. But
Yeah.
that doesn't negate your own body journey or your body experience.
I love everything about what you're saying. I seriously do. Because like nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
There's somebody I had noticed some of the comments in there that were scrolling, and somebody asked about what suggestions or tips you might have for someone to work on body acceptance in a country that doesn't actually have much body diversity. And I feel like it goes along with everything that you're kind of talking about now.
Yeah. I would argue that there is actually quite a bit of body diversity, but you have to find it. And so I think that I would diversify your page and who you follow and who you know, what message is getting put in. Because if you're only following, you know, even if it's just your normal friends, sometimes I forget, and I'm like, I think we're all saying the same thing too much. And then if I go on my private page, which I you don't do anymore, I'm like, whoa, I'm like in a no man's land. Like I gotta go back to my safe little, you know, bubble here where we're all saying the same things, and like all my colleagues and friends on here believe the same thing. I do think that there is diversity, and I think normalizing other people's bodies. So the first thing that I did was I followed a lot of people in larger bodies to just normalize that, hey, I'm not alone in this. And then I say the other thing is, yeah, it is hard, and you do not have to convince the world. You have to convince, and that's hard. It's still going to be hard. That acceptance is still going to be really difficult, because of course we want people to like us, and I still will have family members who question what I'm doing, and I'm not saying that it's not difficult, but
Yeah.
the person that you have to convince is you.
It's true. That makes so much sense to me. And sometimes I'm thinking about like some of the stuff we're talking about, and where there's this, sometimes we try to make this leap, right? From like, oh my God, I hate my body, I want it to be different, to like, how do I go from that to like, my body's amazing? And maybe it's like, as we go through that grief process of just getting to like a neutral place.
Yeah.
Can you just respect the body that you're living in, even if you don't love it? Like, you don't have to love it, but
Yeah.
you can still take care of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe like we don't have to like look out at other people. And I'm thinking a lot about, the lack of diversity for that particular person, that I'm sure it's hard to feel like you're looking around at people who don't look like you.
Yeah.
But I also at the same time think, and I know this is super hard, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are. Um, it really sometimes only takes one person to be brave. One person to just be brave and say, like, I know I'm not like you, but I still think I'm okay. And even if I feel insecure in that, I'm just going to run with it and see what happens. And maybe, just maybe, my doing that will allow some other people to get to that place of feeling like I'm different too. And hey, maybe I'm okay. Like, I'm different, maybe in another way. Maybe I'm too tall, or, by the social norm, or I'm too whatever.
I think that I definitely want to leave space for the people who feel like I don't see a lot of body diversity in my everyday life, and that it is not. It is hard. I'm not going to tell you that it is hard or it's easy to live in a larger body knowing that my body is stigmatized. But I will tell you that it is far easier to live in a large body and accept myself than it is to live in a large body and not accept myself. Because when we look at health overall, my mental health has been better since I found intuitive eating and health at every size, and I stopped trying to justify myself to the world. It brought me a peace that all of the diets and all of the disordered eating I wanted to bring to me could never, like, it promised something it could never deliver on.
Yeah. Well, it's like the big lie of, I mean, I think eating disorders, body dysmorphia, like diets, all of that stuff, it promises like success, and you're going to always be happy with yourself. And you never are, because you're always chasing something.
And here's even evidence of that too, because then it's like, okay, everything you have is inside of you, and you're great the way you are. And now you're starting to compare yourself of, well, I'm not as body positive as that person. It's like the comparison game it will never end. I don't have as many degrees as that person. Like those, and I cannot wait till the day that she is health at every size. But Brene Brown talks a lot about shame and gremlins, and those gremlins are going to come whether you accept this or not, because they're just going to find somewhere else to rear their ugly head. And what I tell people a lot of times is body image and your body, it's a surface level issue. Actually, I didn't credit that. Carolyn Costin, I believe she identifies it like a car light or check engine light. You can turn the car light off, right? You can, but that doesn't mean it goes away. But I think when you really dive deep underneath, it's not just about your body. The thoughts go much deeper. And what I think in the realm of body images, we don't go further than that, right? We try to like make reasons like, well, it's okay, and can you respect? And okay, well, what's the scariest part about that? What is the scariest part of getting bigger? And go underneath that and get to that core belief. And when you can access that core belief, can you then reality test that? And if that thought is true for you, that's where the real clinical work happens. And so for me, and the work that I do with my coaching clients, is I can partner alongside them as they access these core beliefs, or some of them even know, like, I know this is something I believe in. I don't know how to live in, we call it like right opposite I know that this is not what I want to do, but this is what I'm doing. I know I don't have this negative self-talk to myself, or I'm not even sure I'm aware of my negative self-talk. What things can I do differently to challenge those belief systems?
When you so when you're asking those questions about, you know, like what can I do differently, are you seeing, I'm just curious, are you seeing kind of common answers or common themes that people are coming up with, like common first places to start, for example?
So can you give an example? Like if I ask somebody the core
Yeah,
belief.
like so yeah, so if you're saying, so somebody, I don't know, somebody is coming to you and they're still kind of stuck in this whole like mindset of I have to make my body smaller to be happy, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
terrified of my body getting bigger, especially now because we're seeing a lot of that in the quarantine. Like, oh my God, my body might change, right? And I don't mean to say that in a disrespectful way, but there's a lot of panic around it. And I
Is
love what you're saying when you say, I want to challenge you to go underneath that
yes.
and find out, like, do a little bit of work around what are the core issues that keep that belief in place. Where's that fear engendered from?
So I can talk from my own experience.
That'd be awesome.
I actually started working on body image, not because I wanted to talk about body image, because I was in therapy working on dating. And there was my therapist who did not identify with health and exercise, right? But there was still this core belief that no one would love me unless I was smaller. And when I think it now, I'm like, wow, like I really believed that. And I still have people who will tell me that that's a fear they have. And we don't want to minimize that fear, because that fear is very real. But where does that fear come from? And really true for me, the core belief was I didn't want to be rejected. So it was almost easier to believe that someone was going to reject me for my body than that someone could just reject me for being me. That someone isn't going to like me. That it's like, okay, well, it's my body. I can't change that. As opposed to maybe they just don't like my personality. Right. And what I found even just in my own trajectory of dating is I have no problem getting dates or going on dates. And I'm always going to be, I see so many of my friends. I'm just going to say hello to everybody.
It's so great.
So it's not that there isn't a reality to that fear, but rejection is hard. Rejection is hard whether you are in a large body or smaller body. I don't want to minimize, again, you know, fat phobia and the hardship that someone in a larger body, like I imagine. So for me, being on this platform, I experience a lot of trolls and a lot of people who will make really nasty comments that my thin friends and allies don't have to deal with in the same capacity.
Yeah.
So that is a privilege that you have just because of the body size that you live in. And my clinical skills will get questioned because I'm in a larger body. But I digress. It's not to say that being in a large body doesn't make dating harder. It's just not the only thing that makes dating harder. And that's not what my core belief was. My core belief was I am undesirable in a large body. And having to really get down to that and reality testing that of I have friends who are in larger bodies who are fully married. I have friends in larger bodies who go on dates and have no problem. So why is it just me? Why is the concern going back to just me? And that's the core belief stuff that when we just talk about, you know, the silver lining it, right, of body image and, well, look, I just respect your body. You can't do that. You can't, like, you have to go down to the depths of grief to come out the other side and heal. And it hurts and it's painful. I use this example, like uprooting maladaptive thoughts, like a plant. I imagine it's going to be a very painful process. Oh, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
It's the growth and the freedom on the other side, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you feel like once you kind of got started in the process that sort of like being in it and moving through those emotions was actually much more doable than the fear of having to do that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. The fear of having to do the work is the worst part.
Yeah.
I will say the more work you do, the more you're like, when does this end? When do I get to the bottom? The truth is I am still doing my own body image work.
Yep.
It is a misconception that a positive body image is a destination.
Oh my God, yes.
Body image is the journey. It's a relationship. And Anna Sweeney actually talks about this a lot. Your relationship with your body is the longest relationship you will have. So to think that you're ever going to just get to this place where you're 100% in love with all the parts of your body and it never grieves you is a diet culture thought, and it's a lie. And it will never be able to deliver on a promise. It just can't. It's not intended to. It's not meant to.
This will probably sound completely crazy.
Go for it.
I also sometimes think when we think about things like whether it's like healing our relationship with our bodies in terms of body image, or, you know, healing an eating disorder, that it is that destination. That if that were true, how incredibly boring that might actually be, to like arrive someplace and never grow anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you can just make the goal freedom, right?
Yeah.
What does freedom look like? So for me, in my own personal journey, let me know if you can still hear me. I'm gonna put it down because my hand's getting tired.
It's fine.
With food, again, I never had an eating disorder, but I was always very disordered. I was like, I just want to feel normal. I want to be able to go to a party and not be consumed by what I can eat, what I can't eat. I wanted to be able to go into a store and not be overwhelmed with shame about what size I was going to pick out in clothes. I just wanted to live my life as a normal human being without being consumed by my body and food. I will say that I am there even in a large body, that I have found that peace. That doesn't mean that I don't have bad body image days. That doesn't mean that sometimes I'm still not grieved. Like, I think even in this time, I'm noticing my body getting bigger. And I was thinking about it the other day, and it's like our bodies don't know the difference between a pandemic or in a famine. So for all our bodies know is we're stuck inside a cave and we can't go out. So it's gonna, right? Our bodies are just doing what they're meant to do. And it can make me uncomfortable, but it doesn't consume me anymore. And I think that to me is where I want my clients to be, is that, yeah, if I think of a body image on a spectrum, -10, I hate my body, 0, neutral, +10, I love my body. Diet culture tells you you can go from a -10 to a +10. It's not real. I will tell people my goal would be for you to go from, if you're at like a -8, let's get you to a -7. Let's make a tangible change. It's just a little bit. And now when I look back through the trajectory of my life, and I'm like, wow, like I love my body at a 10. I love myself at a 10. And I remember I would lie and I'd be like, I'm like a -2. And now I'm like, oh, it's probably much worse. But I didn't even want to admit it was that bad, because there's shame in that, right? It's like, oh, well, I don't hate my body because, you know, there are days that I feel like I look good. When I look back now, I realize how consumed I was with my body. And my body is the least important thing. It's like a cup, right? So I'm drinking a little bit of seltzer juice in this cup. I could be drinking the same thing. It's a different size, right?
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
Food is food is food is food is food is food. I love, I just noticed
Bodies are bodies.
Tree from Brave Box just said she wishes that she could give this conversation a giant hug and that you need to write a book.
Oh, guys, that's my dream. I want to write a book so badly.
Oh my gosh, it would be amazing if you did. You have so many things that people need to know. And I'm thinking about, you know, a lot of the themes that you're talking about, like living in the relationship with our bodies. And you know, I just don't know if there's anybody on the planet that doesn't have bad body image at times.
Find me one person.
You know, like, I mean, I live with a lot of privilege, and I have to acknowledge that, right? Like, there's a lot of things I haven't had to deal with just by virtue of the fact that I'm in this particular body.
That was another core belief for me, was I was like, if I'm in a smaller body, I won't have body image issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was a core belief that I absolutely believed. And now I believe, I'm like, no, nobody's looking at my body. They're concerned with their own body coming into this situation.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how much you have me thinking about so many things right this minute. It's pretty awesome. But I'm thinking about we make so many, as a culture, I don't mean you or me or the
Yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
per se, but like we as a culture make so many assumptions just based on somebody's appearance. Like you had said earlier, sometimes your clinical skill gets called into question because of your body. I have actually found the exact same thing, to be honest with you, despite
Yeah.
my thin privilege. But because I have a history of an eating disorder,
Yeah.
what I get is she really recovered?
Wow.
Which is like obnoxious as hell.
Absolutely.
It bothers me less now that, I'm older, but
And it's more about them than it does about you, but
it's annoying.
oh,
And
so
then I also feel like there's the microscope when you do this work. If you're open about like previous body image struggles or previous eating disorder history, that
yeah.
people are almost like watching you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you eating? How much of that are you eating? And it's like,
Yeah.
why do we care? Like, it's like, why do we care? Like, it's not important.
Yeah.
What's important is our connection with each other
Yeah.
and the richness of what life has to offer us, which is separate and apart from what we choose to put in our mouths and digest.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking from a clinical sense, I think it is like it's wrong that people question, right? But we as clinicians are subjected isn't the right word, but we submit ourselves to supervision and to peer review and we're not acting alone. Plus,
Yeah.
I know I'm my own counselor because I would not stay sane if I didn't have my own, therapist. But yeah, I do agree that we are under a microscope for sure. And nothing to make you feel like you can't do your job well because of your body size or your, previous diagnosis or, struggles. And we need to change, we need to normalize mental health, even for mental health counselors. It's like saying does your doctor ever get sick? Are they not allowed to get sick? And if they've ever gotten sick, they shouldn't practice medicine? Like, silly. We would never.
Right. It's true. Like they must have not been paying attention in medical school if they caught a cold or the flu.
Right, exactly.
Interesting culture that we live in. And
It is.
super judgmental, really, which
There.
is, and I think that's the part that makes us all vulnerable, right? It's kind of like what you were saying before. Like there's that, we all, I think, have fear of rejection to some degree.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not so much about like, are you going to reject my body or my eye color or my nose or my whatever? It's, are you going to reject me at my core and who I am as a human being?
Yep. Yep. And basic needs are love and belonging. And before you even get to love and belonging, if we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy, it is safety, right? And if you don't feel that safety to experience love and belonging, then we never reach the top of the pyramid, which is self-actualization. And even speaking to that, of thinking of that, are the preliminary needs are physiological needs, right? Which could also make sense why our bodies are freaking out now that we're in a pandemic, is because our basic needs are not being met, even if we have a fridge full of food, a closet full of clothes, we are able to work from home. Our stress response is still triggered because we're going through a collective trauma. I know I'm going all over the place, but I feel like you're tracking with me. So
I am. It's awesome. I love it. And I think everybody else is too.
I know I see all the hearts coming in. It makes my heart so happy.
There was somebody, I like this comment actually, said, this is why it's a really weird time during the pandemic. As a therapist, we're going through the pandemic at the same time as our clients, sort of like going through the experience with them.
Absolutely. But I think that also speaks to the power of grief, because rather than say, I have it all together, I'm going to help you fix it, I am going to sit here with you. And I know that if I need to process my stuff, I have somebody to do that with. But yeah, this is messy and we're going to sit together in this.
Yes. There's a quick aside. Somebody just asked, how can I get help during this time? I'm just going to quickly throw out a couple of things. Follow Body Image with Bree. She's got great content on there. MEDA's doing some free MEDA's doing some free drop-in groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The Eating Disorder Alliance is doing them Mondays and Wednesdays. If you go to @COVID-19 Eating Support, there's live meal and snack support around the clock. There's also a Google Sheet of free resources there. So I just wanted to throw that out for people who are looking for something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
And then
really,
for
it
myself,
occurs to me. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if you mentioned this. It cut off for a minute because I had a phone call. But Anna Sweeney has like 5-day weekly connections with different providers. So
Yep,
Friday
that's
morning,
another one.
you can come. I play my guitar, we sing, and I also talk about a topic just because I think distraction is a really helpful coping skill. I know it gets pooed on a lot of like, oh, well, you need other coping skills other than distraction. If there was ever a time for distraction, we're in it. Now
It's so true. Actually, I don't know if you know off the top of your head who does what day. I know on the connection, it's Anna does Mondays. Doesn't Hannah?
Kimmy does Tuesday, then Haley Wednesday.
Right.
I forgot who does Thursday, and then I do Friday. I will.
You guys all have it on your pages, right? So if they go to your accounts,
yeah, I'll send you afterwards for you to put in like your stories or whatever. But yeah, we do weekly support. This will be my 4th time. Just time is non-existent in quarantine.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'll put it in the story. I'll do a post on it so you can.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, and we each do either like, so if you're eating your breakfast, I usually bring my coffee, and we sit, we chat, we talk, and then we sing. Everyone does a little.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, so.
I love it. You know what? It occurs to me that we didn't actually define, and I just take for granted that people know and they don't, is defining health at every size.
Ooh.
Defining like fat positive. Like,
yeah,
I didn't actually stop for us to do that for people.
Good. That's good. So do you want me to give my my elevator pitch? I always say, I'm like, I can sell you, diet culture can sell you in 2 seconds. I cannot sell you health at every size in a minute, but we'll try, right? So at its core, health at every size is a framework that invites anyone of any size, race, ethnicity, gender, to explore health promoting habits like exercise and eating vegetables at its core, right? But it is so much deeper than that. It is a social justice issue that brings to light the minimized bodies in society who have been rejected for so long, to say you matter too. Like you matter as well. And so, yeah, at its core, it is just the premise that no matter what size body I'm in, I can pursue health habits, and that it does not minimize or mitigate I know the Health at Every Size book says that I have the right to unbiased medical care.
For people who don't understand that, because I've heard some really fantastic examples, could you give an example of what biased medical care looks like when you're somebody living in a larger body?
Sure. So I've gone to the doctor for, let's say, strep throat, and I get a lecture on my weight. I've gotten fear mongered. I've gone to the doctor. I went because I was having, I have low blood pressure, which it runs in my family. It's very like, whatever, which normally, right, the first thing, like, I'll get another microaggression. Oh, wow, your blood pressure is really good. Right. So the assumption is because I'm in a large body or that I'm fat, that my blood pressure is going to be high. And so I go in and I'm like, I am having these, and I now know what it is, but I was having these dizzy spells where I would just get really dizzy and I would have a hard time. It was because my blood pressure was dropping. And I'm getting a lecture on my weight and how concerning my BMI is. And I had to ask the doctor, if my BMI was smaller, how would you treat somebody in a smaller body? I have to advocate for quality care. So much so that I had to have my dietitian call my primary care doctor and say, unless absolutely medically necessary, do not weigh her. And it's been a year and a half, and they haven't weighed me. Ooh, with my knees. It took the I'm reading this comment that came in.
Yep.
This is another thing too, where I think we do this, where we make an assumption that something is our body's fault too. Like, oh, my knees must hurt because I'm in a larger body. And I work with a physical trainer at the gym. And one of the things we realized, my right knee hurts because for two reasons. One, I favor this knee, like when I sit on the couch, I fold this leg, right? And then the other thing is when I sit at my desk, or when I sit, I'm short and my legs don't reach the ground. So I'm pushing this leg underneath that one, and it's straining the knee. So maybe, is it exacerbated by my body weight? I don't know. But what's causing it is my sitting positions. Nothing to do with my weight. And so that's, again, another, I think, trap that we fall into of like, if I were to go into the store and try to reach something on the top shelf, I'm 5'1" on a good day. I'm not going to get mad at myself because I can't reach something on the top shelf. I'm not going to be like, you are a horrible person because you're short and you have to ask for help. But if my pant size gets bigger, or we berate ourselves. Like, it is the worst thing you could do is to get bigger. And so we have to build that awareness around how we feel, because around our bodies changing, because it's so subtle. You might not even realize it. You might not even take stock of, ooh, this is a diet culture thought, or this is a diet cult thought.
I love the diet cult, actually.
It's so good. I'll have to send you the podcast episode too.
Yeah, I definitely want to listen to it. Whenever I have these conversations, I feel so proud of work that we've done to date, right? And there's so much work that still needs to be done.
It's so true.
You know, my dad was actually somebody who lived in a larger body, and he needed a hip replacement desperately, and they would not give him the hip replacement because of his weight. And so he was in substantial pain, and they kept and this was, some years ago, and there was no logic at all around this. They're like, well, it's not going to hold him. I'm like, it's freaking titanium. Like, this makes no sense, like it.
Right.
The amount of suffering that people are doing with this inequitable, just horrible, it's not healthcare.
Yeah.
And I think that was back in like the 90s.
Wow.
And we're still there.
We are still there, but I still think we've made a lot of progress. We've made so much progress, and it feels like a drop in the bucket. But it's funny. Some days this work feels endless, where I'm like, like someone is always going to be able to profit off of diet culture. So there's always going to be a motivation for this. But if I can help one person, it'll be worth it.
And helping people just recognize the messaging and be able to fight back from it. And I think the Health at Every Size movement has been so powerful and so great about educating people. And, I remember when I first started learning about it, it literally stopped me in my tracks. I was somebody that thought that I was so educated on it just based on my own history. And then I realized, like, I didn't know shit.
Right.
Right. Going through your own stuff doesn't mean you know anything.
Right, exactly. But I do think it also does, it does give you that lived experience, which I don't want to minimize, right? Because I never want to speak, for my clients. And I know I've heard from a lot of providers who are in smaller bodies, when they try to speak to clients in larger bodies, they'll get, well, you don't know what I have to go through. And
no, it's true.
And so I just tell people, well, then normalize that. Be like, yeah, you're right. And you know what? That sucks. Being in a larger body, sometimes I have a hard time getting mad when I'm treated that way. Like, I treat it as normal when I go to the doctor and I get treated that way. When I am treated nicely, it makes me emotional because I'm like, I didn't expect that. And I go in with my guns and I'm ready to fight them. And then if they don't fight me, I'm like, oh, wow, that was, so I appreciate when people are allies with me and they're like, no, you don't deserve to be treated that way. And when I have friends in smaller bodies who will tell me about their experiences going to the doctor, and I hear some of the most disordered things that I'm like, wait, what? Like, I had a friend who went to the doctor and the doctor asked her, I hope this story is okay to share. She was like, you know, like, well, what do you eat? And at the time, she was like, not really eating. She was like, cereal. And the doctor's like, as long as you eat it with milk. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Yet, if I tell doctors that I'm eating vegetables and I exercise, they're like, well, maybe you need to do the blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you're getting this from looking at my body. You haven't even looked at my charts, or you're just making an assumption that I'm eating too much because of my body size. So yeah, our healthcare needs improvement, and it can feel exhausting to think of it as a whole. But if we just think of I think of the small connections I've made even here on the internet, and sometimes it can be really fulfilling in just that.
Well, and there's momentum too, which I find is so encouraging. It's a beautiful thing.
I agree. Absolutely.
And it definitely is a matter of finding actually, I wonder if we could, before we sort of maybe wrap up, if we could potentially brainstorm really quickly for people to think of some good sort of health at every size accounts for people to kind of follow, because some people are getting bombarded. Your account is great. At Anna Sweeney at Dietitian Anna.
Yeah. Erin Flores, we said before.
Erin Flores is great.
Yeah.
Lisa Jabril.
Kimmy Singh is another one that I love. I'm trying to think of people who post. Haley Goodrich.
Haley Goodrich is great.
Yeah, I love her. She posts often. Trying to think of on the spot who posts often, right? Who puts out and promotes content.
Yeah.
I know my friend Sam, I think, Break Diet Rules, Sam Privet, she posts quite a bit. I'm trying to think of people in diverse bodies who post a lot too. We could do it. Come up with
All Bodies. I can't think of the account. She posts a lot.
Oh, Your Body is Good.
That's it.
Amanda.